feels like 12:30.
It is 12:30 for you, sort of.
Yeah.
Just remember, it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
We are now ready.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a roll call.
Director Bregman,
Here.
Director Gibson,
Here.
President Kohler. I see her.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
And Chair Russell.
Here. Okay, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Director Bregman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
President Kohler,
Aye.
and Chair Russell.
Aye. Any public comment?
Not on the agenda.
Okay. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Director Bregman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
President Kohler,
Aye.
and Chair Russell.
Aye. Okay, Water Conservation Investment Plan.
Good morning, Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager. Let me pull up my presentation here. There we go. Can you all see my screen? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Start with an overview of all the information we're going to cover this morning. We're going to start with a drought incentive program update. We're going to look at each incentive program we're currently offering, provide some detail on participation levels, and then also review some program goals that staff is proposing. And then we're going to move into the 10-year financial plan conservation investments discussion, where we will present various scenarios for the board's consideration in hopes that, or with the goal really of walking out of this meeting with the level of investment that the board would like to see brought forward into the 10-year financial plan for our conservation programs, for the next 10 years. So starting with the drought update. So we're going to start with the program that has the biggest opportunity to provide us with significant and immediate savings is our turf removal programs. We have two programs currently in place. We have the Mulch Madness program, which is a direct install sheet mulching program where Conservation Corps of the North Bay crews will go out, sheet mulch a site, and disable the irrigation. It launched on June 1st, and installations began on June 21st. Of course, we had to get those crews trained, kind of get that process in place. In addition, we have the turf rebate program, which we're calling Cash for Grass. It's offering $3 per square foot rebate for removing lawn, and then also capping your irrigation systems. So we did have a turf rebate prior to the drought. It was $1, and we increased it on June 1st to $3. So how are we doing? First, let me move all of you so I can see my screen. How are we doing as far as applications? So for the Mulch Madness program, we have a total of 81 applications that have been received and 115 for the rebate program. We have 11 folks who have signed up, but they're undecided which program they want to participate in. And we are tracking participation. You can see from the graph here on June 1st, that's where we see this steep incline that has continued just to grow. All those signups prior were folks reaching out to us to get on the wait list, which is great. So we're seeing about 6 sites per day sign up. And the reason why we're tracking applications and why I'm starting here is that with both of these programs, we are actually calling for the customer to immediately cease irrigation upon submitting their application. The thought here being that even if we can't get out to do the pre-inspection for a couple of weeks, we can still achieve that water savings immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to tracking applications received, we are also, when we go out and do the pre-inspections, we're also, of course, tracking the square footage of each site. So for the Mulch Madness site, we have 22,000 square feet that are in the program that we can anticipate water savings from. Some sites are just pre-approved and some actually have been completed. And the same for Cash for Grass. We have 55,000 square feet in that program. So in a very short time, we're seeing a significant increase in participation levels in each of those programs. Through our landscape area measurement, the project where we're looking at each parcels and the type of landscaping they have on site, we've been given preliminary net figures of the amount of lawn in our service area. So this is irrigated lawn. It's approximately 49 million square feet of irrigated lawn in our service area.
Wow.
So taking that into consideration and looking at the levels of participation that we want to see for this program, we're proposing a target. This target is, and so each of these targets I'll go through, they're all 6 months target, looking at starting from the 1st of July through the end of the year. So in the next 6 months, we propose the target of replacing 2.4 million square feet of turf grass, which equates to 400,000 square feet a month, which would be 5% of the total irrigated lawn area within the district service area.
Harry, before you
Mhm.
move on this, let me just say first, these are fantastic numbers. It's just what we need. When you are talking about you said 49 million square feet of irrigated
Mhm.
lawn. Is that
Mhm.
all residential, or are you including institutional, business areas?
Yeah,
as well?
that's a great clarification. So it's residential, but it includes our dedicated irrigation meters for our multifamily. So it's all residential, not just single family residential. So I think it's important nuance, but so it doesn't include parks or commercial sites, but it does include all residential type sites.
Okay. Are you planning to do anything around commercial sites? I mean,
Yeah,
parks
we
one
are.
thing, but-
Yeah, so the landscape area measurement project is an outcome of verifying the state's data, right? And they're focusing on residential right now, establishing landscape area measurements for residential sites. And we wanted to verify their information. And so that was kind of where we started, was the residential side, but ultimately we do look to go for, district wide, but one step at a time.
Sure. No, I think it absolutely makes sense to be focusing on residential. I mean, that's where the opportunity is. So
Sure.
that's great. I just wanted to have that context.
Mhm. And we do have the commercial sites can participate in these turf conversion programs, absolutely. But as
Oh.
far as a measurement, right, it's giving us an idea of square footage. So 49 million square feet. So this 6-month goal would require us to double our current pace of we currently have about 6 signups a day. And again, they stop irrigation when they sign up, or we ask them to cease irrigation when they sign up. It's actually one of the program requirements. We need to double that to 12. And the projected water savings are listed there at 177 acre feet per year if we were to achieve this goal in the next 6 months. And it has come up that discussions around artificial turf. So I wanted to include a slide that briefly covers why we do not have artificial turf as part of our incentive program. We have a document posted on our website that goes through in greater detail all the reasons. And they're listed here. So you do still have to have irrigation system set up. The lifespan is 10 years or less on this. So, if the sprinklers are in place, they're still intact, and the lifespan is 10 years, there's a pretty good likelihood that turf could go back into those sites. And we really want to achieve long-term savings. And there's, other issues around environmental concerns that are covered. And there's a number of documents out there that touch on this topic as well, if someone wanted to dive into a little bit more deeply.
Carrie,
Yes.
I don't follow the logic here. The goal is to reduce the water usage,
Mhm.
not to improve soil health, not to address these other issues, not to worry about long-term landfill disposal. It's to address water use. So I don't understand the logic of excluding artificial turf. It just doesn't seem consistent with actual needs. And, I agree with Cynthia. I think these are good numbers. I mean, look at it from a pragmatic standpoint. 177 acre feet out of 30,000 or 20,000. It's a great achievement, but it's kind of chump change. And I don't have a solution to speed it up beyond the numbers you're talking about, but it just doesn't seem to me to be aggressive enough if we're really going to make a difference. I calced it out. It's about 1,100 acres of land. And I didn't do the numbers, but I've got to envision the dollar per acre foot is pretty high, based on it only being 1,100 acres. I don't know off the top of my head what the area of golf courses is in Marin, but I have to feel it's approaching that kind of number of 1,100 acres. So, I think this is a good program. I'm supporting it. I've shut my sprinklers off. I don't feel the evil aspects that you apparently do of leaving sprinklers in place. When you're doing landscaping, the cost of installing sprinklers is down in the budget dust numbers. You might be talking $1,000 on $50,000. It's not going to make anybody's hard times to not have to redo their sprinklers. And if I were going to re-landscape today, I would redo the sprinklers just because of the age of the sprinklers. So I don't think that, that kind of, at least for me, that kind of logic just doesn't hold water. And I'm uncomfortable with this argument.
I just wanted to briefly, if I could, note that this isn't necessarily staff's preference. This is, of course, the board could modify it. It really is an industry standard approach, as far as I know, on these rebate programs. And I am aware in other places where this was being discussed, it did mobilize quite a bit of environmental pushback of promoting artificial turf. I appreciate the comments that our role absolutely is water reduction. I think this is a good policy discussion and ultimately a policy determination if the board would like us to bring this back for actual shift.
I'm just going to
Definitely.
weigh in, if I could just good for a second. I think, Larry, while I totally agree with you, and I think we should have a longer conversation about increasing the resources for the turf changeout, I'm not quite with you on the artificial turf issue. For one thing, it's expensive. And for another, I think these are really very good reasons to not include it. I mean, our overall interest is in reducing water for sure, but these other issues really do go to our mission, especially around the issues with climate change, which we're committed to addressing. Artificial turf is notorious for increasing the heat island effect and contributing to climate challenges. So, I mean, we've got plenty of other alternatives. We don't need it's hard for me to imagine that there are going to be very many people who are going to decide not to participate in our turf changeout program if they can't use artificial turf. There's lots of other alternatives. So I think Ben is exactly right. I think this is the industry standard. And I will just say, I would be uncomfortable including this as an option. I don't think we need it, not in this particular climate.
Well, I'm not comfortable with that conclusion. So I think we need to bring it back and have a full discussion. Las Vegas allows it. And as you have repeatedly said, they're the leader in the pack. So if the one who is likely to gain the most in Las Vegas is still allowing it, and if they're not worried about heat islands, then I don't think we should worry about heat islands.
I'm not sure they may allow for it. I'm not sure they pay for it. And maybe that's something
They pay
Carrie
for
can
it.
check
I
on.
looked it up. They pay
Okay.
for it. I checked
Okay.
it. So, I think this needs more evaluation because I think it's apples and oranges argument. Like I say, the goal is to reduce the water, and however you reduce the water, that's where we should be focused. The other things are alternative issues to me that, while maybe they're important, I can assure you, I don't know how many acres there are in Marin, but it's got to be in the millions, and we're doing 1,100 acres. So if we did the whole turf, it's not very much out of the total. I don't think it's even measurable difference in terms of the heat issues and those kind of things.
Well, no, but that's just for the next 6 months. I mean, I think we're looking at this as a long-term solution.
1,124 acres is the total acreage of 49 million square feet.
But that's just, I mean, Carrie, correct me, that's just 6 months. It's not like we're planning to, that's just the beginning of this program. And I think you and I both agree.
That's the total, Cynthia. 49 million square feet is the total.
No, I'm sorry. What I'm saying is the limited number, the 1,100, the number.
No. It's 49 million square feet is 1,100 acres. I calced it out.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought you were talking about, but it's a long-term program is what I'm saying. So.
of course. No, that's cool. But we have a short-term need, which to me.
So we can go ahead and bring this item back as a discrete item for focused discussion. That may be the best.
Sure.
Okay, moving on. Looking at the Flume program. So the Flume is a device, just for anyone who may not know, that provides real-time water use data directly to your phone or tablet. It's a great opportunity for customers to have detailed granular information on their own water use. Through the 12th of this month, we had 1,332 installations, and the program launched in May. This is seen, and it's the rollout of this and the uptake of this program is absolutely amazing. It's really been unprecedented. So it's great that so many people are participating. For the next 6 months, we've established the goal or proposed the goal of 2,700 new devices being installed, which is 450 devices per month, with a projected water savings of 78 acre-feet per year.
Carrie,
I'm all in favor. Go ahead, Larry. Sorry.
just on the turf replacement, we, one of the technicians was just here about a half hour ago and indicated that our contract with the Conservation Corps is going to be over in the next month or two. So I'm just wondering if you could give us an update on the status of the contract with the Conservation Corps and whether this program is going to continue into the end of the year as far as actively replacing turf.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our contract with CCNB, what they do is they do 6-week stints, and that's kind of how they do their crews is over a course of 6 weeks. So we had them for the first 6 weeks, and we are looking to get a contract in place to extend that out. My understanding is that they actually only do work into October. Just that's how they set up their crews. And so if we can get them to extend it to the end of the year, we absolutely will be pursuing that. And bringing, of course, that would require us to bring it back to you all for approval. But if they cannot continue beyond October for whatever reasons they have for their own programming, then we would stop that portion of the program. The rebate program would continue to stay in place, and we're actually getting the most of our participation through the rebate program, so that's good. And then we could, bring it back in the fall, or excuse me, in the spring if we need to, and when they restart.
We could also look at deploying other resources to continue the work. So we'll keep the board updated on that.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea, and to do the program, and I support the program, and also support bringing back the artificial turf item for further discussion separately.
Just a quick comment. There's 530,000 acres of land in Marin County. Just to put things in perspective.
All right.
I have a question about the plume. I think it's a great idea. It seems to me perhaps to be a little bit of a misguided investment, though. It solves an immediate problem, giving the people the data, but it's kind of flushing money down the toilet with respect to AMI. I never got a number back then. Maybe you fed me one, but I didn't catch it, of how much it costs to do an AMI installation. My recollection, it was something like $350, and we're spending $150 on this thing, which basically becomes obsolete the moment that AMI shows up, whenever that might be. So it's a good plug, a good short-term fix. But like I say, a better short-term fix might be to just put the AMI in.
Our plan for AMI is very long-term. I mean, I certainly agree with you, but what sounds like you're not suggesting that we don't go forward with this, because this is, I think, like most districts are seeing this as a bridge, the way you're describing, but it's going to take us a long time to get AMI. I mean, we're at what, less than 5%, right, Ben?
But not to do 2,700 sites. You see, that's the thing. We have more than that now. So it's doubling what we have today. So, it's just that, it's like painting your house and then knocking it down. It's like, okay, it looked nice for 6 months before we knocked it down, but now it's gone.
I don't think it's 6 months is the point, Larry. It's going to be a long time.
It can be, Cynthia. For 2,700 sites, we could do 2,700 sites. That's my point.
Right. If I could, we're rapidly moving contract to develop the scope of AMI and bring that for decision making to the board in likely with the board's concurrence direction, move full scale at a rapid pace into AMI. Granted, as Director President Kohler's noting, that will be multi-years. I believe what Director Russell is suggesting in the interim, in lieu of flume, just put on AMI meters. And there, a challenge is, and it's not impossible to overcome, is the technology we're putting in now, AMI, if we were to do that, may or may not be compatible with the long-term AMI plan. So we're trying to balance all of these, and we could get more granular at a subsequent presentation so the board kind of appreciates the different variables we're working with here.
Understood, Ben, and appreciated. The fact is, though, that this is a decision about AMI, the flume. And, I think you need to be sure that where we're going is where we want to go. This is money that could be spent on AMI. And even if you have to tear out the transmission portion of the AMI, I didn't like the decision to go to cell phone to begin with. So I've always been pushing the Wi-Fi side of it. But be that as it may, the sites that are compatible with AMI today could be AMI'd and forget about the flume for them.
Mhm.
I mean, like I look at the ones on the Tiburon Peninsula, for instance, in this drawing, there's 61 requests. So presumably all of those could qualify for AMI because there are already 2,800 AMI here or something like that.
Mhm.
Now that's a small number out of the total. And don't misunderstand, I am 1,000% behind this. It's
Oh.
just the question of, is it the right place to spend money?
I mean, I think it's the right place to spend money because we can do it right now. AMI
But
is
you can
gonna
do
take-
AMI right. No,
I don't think we
AMI,
can.
you can, no, you can.
Okay,
You
but then,
can.
why we haven't? I mean,
It's because of this indecision about the method of transmission of the data. We're currently
exactly.
using cell phone. Well, but for 2,800, we already have that, right?
But
We already have this problem.
But Larry, this is something that we can do right now at less cost, right? And the other issue with AMI is how to finance it because it is more expensive. We're trying to get that, done pervasively. And the opportunity for federal and state, frankly, grants and loans to do that is much higher, right? And all of that would take time. Whereas this is a program, we've got all of these requests. We can do this right now. Why not see it as a bridge? We do all sorts of things like that where you're going to go to something else later, but you're going to go to a low cost option while you have the time, while you're taking the time to get you to the longer term. So I don't really buy the analogy that you're painting the house and then tearing it down. This is really something that's giving you the time to do this in a comprehensive, methodical way.
What we could do is join this item with the artificial turf item. And when we bring that item back, really go into what AMI would get us now and how what parts of it would be and what parts of it may not be compatible with the long term, and look at the cost structure with that as compared to flume, and see where we go from there. And we could do that.
With the caveat being, Ben, understand that everybody has to be the beta test. That's how technology moves forward. You take your chances, you spend your money and you take your chances. If you wait for the ultimate beta, perfect solution, it never gets done. So there's always an element of risk. There's always an element of, oops, we went down the wrong road. Okay. All I'm saying, Cynthia and Ben here, is that for those sites that could qualify for AMI instead of flume, I think they should get AMI. That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I think it's a better investment.
Okay, we'll bring this back in detail.
Okay. And like I say, keep rolling. It's fine. I don't have any problems with where we're going, except that in the long term, I don't think it's a wise pathway necessarily.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to clothes washers. In 2019 and 2020, we were pretty consistent each year. We had about 65, 66 rebates. And then so far through June of this year, we're already at 62 rebates. So there's been a significant uptake in the program recently, which is great news. So we've established the target of 125 rebates over the course of the next 6 months. And the projected water savings are 2 acre-feet per year.
And that's really reflective. To me, it shows success in our communications program of getting out information on our incentives and rebates. So nice job to comms.
Yeah, we'll see a couple more good examples of that as well. Looking at rain barrels, so we have 2.5 times greater participation in 2021 than we did from last year. And also the capacity continues to increase. We're currently seeing our average capacity at 850 gallons. So we've established a target for the next 6 months of 60 sites, which would be 10 a month, with projected water savings of 40 acre feet per year. Looking at pool covers, we offer a $100 rebate for pool covers. In 2019, we had 15 rebates. In 2020, we had discontinued and sunsetted that program, the rebate program. In 2021, we brought it back as part of our drought response. We currently have 101 rebates issued through this program. We pulled some parcel data, and that we know there's about 6,800 pools within the service area, and the average pool size is 530 square feet. So we've established a goal of 60 pool covers over the next 6 months. And that would be 4%. It would result in a total from all of our pool cover incentive programs we've had over the years, a 4% saturation.
But I just make sort of not quite snide remark, but we have a pool. Pool covers also are temporary and go into the landfill, and they last about 10 years, but just, you know, it's the plague of plastics, but it is a fact that they are also a polluter plastic product.
Good point.
All right, looking at hot water recirculating system rebates. So this is a system of a pump, or you could do a whole house recirc as well, which will reduce the water waste while you wait for your water to get hot. 2019, we had 15 rebates. Similar to pool covers, we had sunsetted this program in 2020. We brought it back, and so far we've had 12 rebates this year. We established the target for the next 6 months of 30 rebates, which would be 5 a month. See if I can advance here. Moving on to gray water. So this is another program where marketing is absolutely influence participation. So for our webinars for 2020, we had 66 participants. In 2021, so far, we've had 367. And there had been a significant push from our comms team to really get the word out about these webinars. And as a result, you can see the levels of participation went up. We've received 82 applications, all of them this year, even though the program was for the last 2 years, right? And 10 incentive kits have been issued, or incentives have been issued for kits. We've established a goal of 60 sites for the next 6 months, with 5.5 acre feet per year savings is being projected. There's also a discussion that's been brought up at the recent board meetings around programs we had discontinued, specifically the toilet replacement program. The district started offering incentives back in 1993 to replace toilets. They ended in 2019. During that time frame, over 48,000 toilets were incentivized within the service area, and another 14,000 were replaced through policy, through both time of sale and time of ordinance programs. But as of 2014, only high efficiency toilets can be sold in the state of California. And so that's really was really the driver to ending this program, sunsetting this program, because that was the only product customers could buy was very water efficient. So that's the status of the toilets.
Before we move on that, I brought this up, and the fact is that if we provided a rebate, it would be an incentive for folks to replace their toilets. So I understand that, there's a limited product availability, but the point is we want to incentivize people to replace their toilets. So I think we should bring this back. I continue to advocate for a greater emphasis on saving toilet flushing, because we know that's going to save water. And it's a permanent change. Once that device is changed out, it's done. And believe me, there's many non-conforming toilets in our district. So I would urge the board to continue or to renew this program.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. To me, the issue is how saturated are we? And it may not matter, every toilet makes a difference. So I'm not sure it's, I don't see any harm in it, but Carrie, can you put these numbers in perspective? It says over 48,000 toilets incentivized. What are the additional 14,000? That's your estimate of what's just been replaced as just people doing that on their own?
No, it's an estimate from the time of sale and time of service changeouts that occurred.
I see. So given the total number here of something close to 60,000, what do you have an estimate for, the high flush toilets that are still out there?
I do not off
Okay.
the top of my head.
I mean,
Yeah, yep.
I don't have a problem with Larry's recommendation. I think, I think it's useful to provide the public with a sense of context about how far we've gone, but yeah, I don't see any downside to it.
And just for clarification, what does it mean that the toilets were incentivized?
Meaning we offered a rebate, all these incentive programs here. We did a loan program, we did rebates, we did giveaways, school retrofit programs,
So
these various.
That's the total number of folks that got rebates of some sort.
Total number of fixtures that have been distributed through any of our incentive programs.
And what's the difference between that and the replacement?
It would be the same. So meaning it's not just homes, right? So many homes have more than one fixture. So we can't just say number of sites because sometimes only one fixture is replaced anyway. So we don't know the total number of toilets in the service area. We do know how many we've incentivized, and we know how many have gone through our ordinance or our policies where they've made that change or have told us they've made that change to their
Well,
fixtures.
we've got 60,000 customers, and I would imagine there's, probably an average of over 2 facilities per customer. So I think there's a lot of territory that remains unchanged. And again, it's for the board's consideration, but I think it's kind of a no-lose proposition to bring it back.
So
Sounds like we'll bring it back.
we can
I
add that-
agree. Is there a cost for having it if it's not used?
No,
So, I mean, the more the merrier then.
Is there any
So-
difference in the amount of waters saved from toilets that were put in 2014 to state-of-the-art toilets today? Are they both have the same efficiency?
I wouldn't go there because I mean, there'll be a very slight, like, I don't think you'll get much bang for the buck. I think this should be limited to older toilets. But Carrie can come back with recommendations about that.
Sounds good. We'll
Yeah,
bring that back
okay.
as well.
okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, so in summary, wanted to pull all of the estimates that, or the targets that were presented on the prior slides into one summary slide and include our June participation, because I think that kind of helps tell the story about how aspirational these current targets are that we are proposing. In addition, we wanted to provide an idea around the level of expenditures if we were able to meet those targets, and include the water savings, which of course include under the assumption that we'll meet the levels of participation within these programs, and that this is only for 6 months of participation. Before I move on. Yep.
So before you move on, so first of all, I just want to thank you for setting this up. This is exactly what I think the board and the public need to see our targets, as well as associated expenditures. And to Larry Russell's point earlier, I'd sure like to see us increase these targets if we could. Can you talk about what would be I mean, I understand that anything that involves a doubling is a big lift, but it really is just resources. So obviously if we were going to increase the targets, we need to be talking about increasing staff, not just the amount of money that we're putting into the rebates to actually process these requests. Because to really get to where we need to go, I mean, again, to Larry Russell's point, this is a good start, but these are relatively modest savings compared to what we can be achieving, given that we have we're still looking at GPCD of, I think it was 124 in the most recent report. So do you have you been able to give some thoughts to what it would take to actually increase these targets significantly? In terms of staff resources, I mean.
Yeah, we have. So, and there's ongoing discussion around resource needs and ensuring that those resources are provided, and establishing these goals will result in absolutely the need for additional staff resources, really to go out and do the inspections, the pre-approvals and the post inspections. It would probably take 5 temporary staff to assist with meeting these goals and, doing hitting the number of inspections each day to achieve these levels. And if we get more, right, we have a higher level of participation, that would be great. We want to, we'll aim for more, but we want to at least have a target.
What do you think limits our current numbers to 6 per day? Is it contact with the people, or is it our ability to process?
So 6 per day are customers signing up, and
Yep.
I think it is contact to people, which is why our next section is going to come from Jeannie, talking about what our
Okay.
communications plan will look like to achieve these goals. So we're gonna move on unless there's any other questions on this.
I'd like this to come back. So I think this is a good start, but I think it's a start. So I think we're going to bring a few other things back. I'd like to propose that this come back as well, and we can talk about, from a resource perspective, what it would take to increase these targets even further.
Okay, very good.
That's cool.
We'll turn it over to Jeannie.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Carrie. So obviously Carrie's team and comms partner very closely during the drought, and we have our existing communications plan. So what we've outlined here for you today is specifically to support these new goals for the rebate program. So this would be in addition to all the other programs that we're running now for general drought and conservation. So one of the first things we want to do is put together a comprehensive mailer that will go to all residents, all of our customers, not just people who receive the bills, right? Similar to what we do with our conservation mailers. And this mailer would focus on outdoor rebates. Carrie mentioned the cash for grass lawn replacements, the mulch madness, the gray water kits, the programs that we know where we can get the greatest water savings. So in addition to that, we will continue to put inserts in our customer bills. We will continue to focus on the newsletter savings in terms of conservation. But one of the things we wanted to do a little bit differently and kind of test out is with the next bill insert, sort of create a redeemable coupon, if you will. And the goal there is to just inspire people to take action a lot quicker, because we know we're in a critical time this summer. So we're trying a different approach here to see if people will just take advantage and jump into it right now. If they've been on the fence, now's the time to do it. We're going to be providing them with all the tools and resources and rebates to get them there.
Can you talk a little bit more about that before you leave that slide, Jeannie? I'm not sure I completely understand. How would the redeemable coupon work? Just walk us through that operationally.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to make it super simple. It's something that can be done digitally. They don't need to turn in the coupon. We just are using that as sort of a marketing tool to tell them, okay, all you need to do is, hit this link or go to this link and just let us know, and you can qualify for the coupon. I believe that all of these are super easy and super accessible. So anything we can do to simplify it, that's exactly what we want to do. So the goal of the coupon is just to give them that incentive, just that extra push to do it now. And that's how we plan to devise it. So it's not going to be, turn this in your envelope. It's going to be, hey, all you need to do is go here and you'll see a link to get you all started and going.
Got it. But this is going to be a paper coupon that's going to be in the bills.
Yes, it's going to be in the bill insert, and it's also for people who get bills online. But the process is not a paper process. It's a digital process, right? And you're going to see it on social media channels as well.
Great. I think that's brilliant. That's great.
And what's it redeemable for?
It's going to push to our rebates. It's going to just be another way to let people know they can get $100 off a gray water kit, or, they can qualify for the existing $3 a square foot. It's just another marketing push in a different way to inspire greater action more quickly. That's what the goal is.
Would it be possible to have something like you get $5 off your bill if you respond to this?
Sure. I think we can look at any kind of incentives, but Carrie and I were working on, okay, how can we get them from understanding and at the awareness level to the action level? So
Absolutely.
We're willing to consider, all kinds of options to do that. We're just trying to be more creative on this particular campaign because we know we really want to get the participation levels up in the summertime. Okay, so the next piece here, of course, is our e-newsletter promotion. And we are already planning our special rebate edition. So this will only be about rebates. And the good thing about this approach or this platform is we know we can already reach more than 23,000 people who are engaged with us. And what that means is these are people who either participate in our volunteer programs or who are customers who have stayed with us with the email promotions that we have been putting out so far. And I think that's a really good audience to tap, people who know what we do and who know the importance of saving water. So we're in the process of putting that together to see if we can get that out as early as next week in conjunction with Carrie's team, just to make sure they're ready. Because what we have found is when we have pushed out this way, and the flume is a good example, as soon as that goes out, there's an uptick. So we need to be ready on both ends to respond, because we don't want to push out and have people wait. We want to make sure that it's a seamless execution. So that's what we're working on right now with Carrie and her team. So in addition to that, sorry, one back. So in addition to that, we have a targeted social media promotion plan. What we've learned in the current campaign on drought and conservation is our social media sponsored ads really work. I mean, we are seeing really good levels of participation. So what we want to do with this particular campaign is use geofence data. Is my audio okay?
It's okay.
I'm not sure who that was. So what we want to do here is use geofenced data. And we're going to work with Carrie to see what kind of data we have on high water users. We're also going to work on crafting the message so that it's a little more effective. We talked about this earlier, about looking at data, looking at focus group information, and looking at survey data in conjunction with our consultant to find the type of message that we think would most resonate with these high water users. And that's sort of the plan and the thinking behind the targeted social media promotion campaign.
Jeannie, can you talk about, before you go on, when will you be doing the focus groups and the surveys?
Carrie and I have been talking about that with Data Instincts, and maybe she's in a better position to talk about the timing. But we talked about it as recently as yesterday in terms of how soon we can get going. Carrie, do you have anything?
I don't have an update on when we're going to have that rolled out.
Okay, so if you could, at some point, the next meeting may be too soon, but if you guys could get back to us, I think just a schedule, so we have a sense of that, because I think it's great that we're finally moving forward on this. We've been discussing focus groups and surveys for some time, but they do take time to do, and we're kind of in it now. Like, it would have been better to have done it earlier, but it's good that it's going forward now. So I think the board is really going to want to hear what the schedule is for getting these things going.
Absolutely. And keep in mind that it's not a one-shot deal, right? So as soon as we get the data that Carrie and I have been talking about in terms of geographic locations of high water users, we can begin with that promotion right now. We don't have to necessarily wait till we get all the data in tow. Messages are fine to be refined along the way. In fact, it's really instructional, right? So we'll start getting that messaging out and see how it resonates by the reach and the engagement levels. Then we'll tweak along the way. And when we get this data, then of course we're going to adjust our messaging and our tactics to make sure that we're in sync and getting the most reach that we possibly can, but also the most engagement. And we're looking at new ways of getting that engagement, and instead of just click here, is there anything else we can do to just make it super duper easy to get people to take that next jump? So we have been doing a lot of work around rebates, but our goal here is getting them to take that next step, that action that we keep talking about. So what you see here.
Jeannie, a question. It seems to me that we have sent letters out to the tier 4s and the tier 3s. So, I mean, we must have them identified to some level in a database. There may be need for more of that, but it seems to me the easiest low-hanging fruit is just to go to the bills or go to the letters and pull those addresses. I mean, I think if you sent a map to the board, most of us could draw where those tier 4s and tier 3s are in the district. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, so
Um,
Carrie does have that data, and what we talked about is using that data that we have, and that's sort of what that slide was talking about. And by geofencing, just targeting that particular areas with certain messages to movement.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
So we are using that data.
Good.
All the data that we have available to us, and Carrie and I were just talking about that yesterday, not just using the data, but kind of maximizing it to see if we can tailor and refine messages actually by zip code.
Okay, I didn't know what geofencing meant. That sounded like some kind of outside database, but now I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. Just sort of,
That's okay. That's okay.
yeah, a way to
And,
get
and
it out.
Jeannie, as far as the partnerships with the shops, I think that's an excellent idea.
Mhm.
You know, maybe having them put together drought kits, you know,
Mhm.
consisting of buckets, shower heads, etc. Right? You know, if we could get them to kind of give us some prominent space.
Right.
And I don't know if we could somehow, you know, give people a coupon to go get a drought kit at their
Yep.
local store.
Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
great idea. Same way, Larry, we could have them have the incentive coupons there at these
Right.
locations.
Right. I mean, you know, it's going to take some legwork to get the product out, but you know.
Exactly. And that's what this slide is talking about. Perfect segue. Thank you so much, Director Bragman. So advertising has got to be a piece of this, but what we want to do is really strategically buy advertising at key platforms that we know we can get some success with. And so while we're doing very broad buys for our overall conservation campaign, because you do want to raise general awareness, with this very detailed targeted messaging, we are looking at strategic buys to really move that needle again. And the placement partnerships that you see there with gardening shops and centers, that's sort of what we're talking about, just making sure we have the right collateral there. We're getting ready for our next Drought drive up. So we're putting together those materials that you were talking about, those buckets, the information. And I love the idea, Director Russell, of making sure we include the coupon or, you know, cross-pollinating any of the other materials that we have and pushing them out to our partners here that have stakeholder interests. So great, you know, that's something that we're definitely working on.
And also just as far as gardening shops and centers should probably include hardware stores like Ace, you know, because a lot of the things we're providing are more like hardware, you know, like
Exactly.
shower and
Right.
those type of devices. So just so that's clear.
Yep, totally. In fact, we were talking about Home Depot and other centers and trying to get a handle on that. So we totally agree. And then finally, to the advertising campaign, we want to make sure that we're digital because digital is critical, especially these days. And we, again, want to really be strategic in the kinds of websites we're targeting. We'll have some general reach, but we also want to be really focused in the targeting to see if we can, again, get that next step, that next action going. And then the other piece of this that we think we really want to try to push here are targeted radio ads, drive time ads that all push to our rebate page. So we've got a couple of strategies that we're working on in terms of radio ads to make them a little bit different. So we're really excited to see if we can test those out and see. With the radio ads, we'll probably start testing over a 2-week period and again, refining the message. I think with any advertising, you do want the ability to refine the message based on the data and what you learn from the success of what you're hearing and seeing.
Could I again urge us to get some video PSAs out there, even if they're very simple? You know, we're now in what, month 4 or 5. You know, radio's great. Visual, I think, has more impact. And I know you got your hands full, but I would love to see us get some PSAs out there. I think simple is good. They don't need to be.
We totally agree. In fact, we have draft scripts that are done and we now have a videographer working with us. And we're talking about just sort of 2 different tracks with the video. So I think you'll see that very quickly. So thank you for your patience on that.
My impatience is. Thank you. Okay.
Well put. Okay, and then the last thing I want to touch on is the importance of boots on the ground, right? So for this community outreach effort, again, centered on rebates, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to expand that collateral distribution. Again, at open markets, we're set to do that as early as next week. And then other community events as well. Carrie mentioned earlier in a different presentation, the youth program. And so we want to maximize that outreach as well. So that would be at recreational events and on our watershed. So we're sort of making sure that our program is integrated enough, but yet tailored enough to achieve the ambitious goals for the rebate program that Carrie's created. And then finally, we have another Drought drive-up event coming up, and we know that it's been successful with high participation rates. So what we want to do here again is have targeted materials, and we're going to do on-the-spot signups and on-the-spot interest forms. And this is a specific and very direct way, a marketing way, to make sure that we don't lose those customers. It's fine to put information in a bucket and say, here you go. But if we are on site, really getting the information, helping them decide what works best, we think we can, again, have that next step to action. So we're gonna take a different approach at this drive-up event in terms of the rebate programs. And again, part of that means getting even more people to participate. So we're gonna start promoting that with some conservation water saving giveaways as well. We're really excited about that. We think we will get really good responses in terms of the drive-up event. And I think Carrie, it's back to you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, before we move on, we'll see if there's any other questions on the drought update before we move on to the 10-year financial plan. Hearing none.
I just want to thank both of you for moving forward so intentionally on the comms piece. I think it's looking really good, and I'm going to agree with Larry. We've all been waiting with bated breath for the PSAs, and glad that that's moving forward. And Jeannie, if you want to talk a little bit about the extent to which the new consultant is help supporting that, maybe not now, but in a future update, I think that would be useful.
Sure, happy to do that. Thank you.
All right, very good. So moving into the 10-year financial plan, conservation investment. So wanted to start with developing effective conservation programs. So we just heard about a number of incentives that we are offering up and pushing, but we also want to recognize, and also the community engagement piece, right? Letting our customers know and about our programs and offerings is very important, but also want to recognize the role that policy and regulations play in achieving the water savings, right? So while the aspirational goals for turf replacement may seem like a drop in the bucket, right? There's also other ways that we can achieve savings, leaning on policy and community engagement as well. So we're going to start with policy, and we'll go through each one of those items I just mentioned. Looking at some landscape policy considerations. So starting with the residential customers, there might be an opportunity in the future, right? This is 10-year financial plan, so we're thinking not just drought response, we're thinking long-term here. Looking at residential customers, there's an opportunity to put conditions or restrictions on landscaping through potentially requiring the installation of on-site non-potable water supply for all of their landscape water use needs. There's an opportunity to consider not installing turf in front yards, or not allowing turf to be installed in front yards, or limiting backyard high water use landscaping in the backyard to no more than 25%, or some other maximum that the board would may consider approving. So these are ways we can really look at landscape, changing our landscape requirements and restrictions to achieve long-term water savings. Another opportunity would be looking at non-residential sites and prohibiting non-functional turf areas. So that would mean that functional turf areas would then be defined as schools, parks, and ball fields and other areas that are large enough to allow for active use, and then non-functional turf areas would not then be allowed. We do want to keep in mind that, right, we don't have the ability to restrict the land use, but this is an area where we can put restrictions on how the customers use the water, and so looking at landscaping policies may be a consideration for the board to potentially want to move forward on at some point. Other policy considerations might be looking at refinements to our current rate structures and rate designs, or programs that impact rates. One would be the summer allocation rate, looking at the effectiveness and the outcomes of having a summer allocation on water demands that, potentially increase water demands because of the way that rate structure is set up. So looking at the tier 4 exemption, which is where customers can take action to commit to conserving water and having efficient fixtures and such within their home, but then they never pay those tier 4 rates, right? And so we have some high water users who are part of the tier 4 exemption program that still continue to use a significant amount of water, and so we might want to take a closer look at that. Another opportunity would be the residential irrigation only accounts. These are homes that have 2 water meters, one for indoor and one for their outdoor irrigation. And that doesn't necessarily drive the need to conserve when you have an opportunity to not pay necessarily a higher rate than others. And finally, the consideration of establishing water budgets for all customers, which is kind of the holy grail of rate policy design. And but something that we definitely want to keep on the radar, right, is not overlook it and just dismiss it as not a possibility, but that we should continue to consider it.
Can we do better than continue to consider it? Can we start digging into that? I mean, it comes up, but we don't really move it forward. And since we're now talking about the 10-year plan, I think we want to do more than consider it. At least I'd like to hear from the other board members on it. It seems to me that's the direction we really need to be going as a district for the long term.
If I could, as we start moving into the next rate setting process with the COSA, we do plan to take a serious look at it and look at the timing it would take and what data we would need, and not look at it something future aspirational, but really try to understand specifically what it would take, and we would brief the board on that as we move forward in the time frame sufficient to do what we could with it.
Some additional policy considerations might be looking at new connections, right? Long term, looking at new connections of a net zero offset program or some other type of offset program could be brought forward. And then also looking at kind of more granular, requiring the installation of hot water recirculating systems to ensure that the wait time for hot water is minimized to get those water savings. Finally, looking at requiring AMI endpoints or a flume type device to provide the data to our customers.
I think it should add gray water to that, Carrie.
Gray water, yeah.
Mandatory gray water.
Mm-hmm. So that's currently on the books.
Maybe a mandatory rainwater collection too.
Right. So that was kind of where I was going with this first item, require installation of an on-site non-potable water supply, right?
Yeah.
But it certainly couldn't be broadened in a number of ways. It could be stormwater, rainwater, gray water, also all the waters.
You can anticipate a substantial pushback from the users when they find out they have to install a backflow device. Just FYI.
Yeah,
so,
we have seen that. Yeah.
Well, you're going to get it. I mean, most of the houses here where I live have backflow devices because they have docks. So, they're used to it, but they don't like it. And that $100 fee to get it tested it just irritates them to no end. Just FYI.
And of course, that's the benefit of doing something like this under new connections, because it does slowly move the ball.
That's true.
forward.
That's true. Yeah, one could argue every house should have a backflow device, regardless of these things, just from general health protection.
Some other policy proposals might be to continue the pool cover requirement. So currently our code states that new pools must be covered. And during the drought, as part of our drought response, we required all pools to be covered. And so that could be, extended out. And then other policy proposals might include a residential time of service or time of sale ordinance for either fixture replacement or, other water saving measures.
Could I just put a plug in for Fairfax, which did pass a resale inspection replacement ordinance a couple years ago. And I'm going to be bringing that proposal to San Anselmo and Ross too. So, I think, that is probably our only chance to really get in and do inspections. And even those are difficult to do as far as getting compliance. So, you know, it's one thing to have it on the books. It's another thing for it to be enforced.
That's absolutely
I'll
true.
send that to you, Carrie, and I'll circulate it. You can circulate it to the board.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so moving on beyond policy, we wanted to talk a little bit about incentives and kind of the process for evaluating incentive programs and developing incentive programs. And so I'm in a few slides, I have some scenarios, but I kind of want to walk through the process we went through for developing the savings and assumptions for those scenarios. So to help clarify this, I have a sample program, our turf replacement program. So when we look at our turf replacement program, we offer $3 a square foot for our rebate. Mind you, right, we just increased this drought response. Prior to that, it was $1 a square foot. But with $3 a square foot, we can anticipate a higher level of participation, meaning that we estimated that over the course of 10 years, that 7% each year, we would get we get 7% of our residential customers to participate each year. And we also assumed that 1,500 square feet would be removed per site. And as a result, that annual participation would be 5.25 million square feet. When we look at, we have taken into consideration the incentive amount. When that increases, the annual participation increases, right? And when we were only offering $1 per square foot, the annual participation was adjusted down, you know, relative to acknowledging that less folks would necessarily take us up on that offer. But regardless of the incentive or the participation, the annual savings is the same, it's 24 gallons per square foot. And finally, we took into consideration a useful life of 20 years, meaning that we can anticipate having, when we calculate the savings, we can anticipate achieving those savings for 20 years for each of these replacements. And as a result, the cost is about $2,000 per acre foot. So again, we did this for every one of our programs that we used in our package scenarios. We went through this process in order to calculate savings and also costs. But before we go into the scenarios, yeah, go ahead.
Before you leave that, I mean, that is a much more aggressive approach than we're currently in. That seems more logical to me. I mean, that's about 10% of the square footage per year. So how do you get from where we are to this?
So it's actually the same, Director Russell. So we did 6 months was 5%, and this is an annual participation, which is would be 10%. Right. So
okay, so you're telling me we're going to do 2.5 million square feet in the first 6 months?
2.5 million square feet in the next 6 months, starting from July 1st to the end of December is our target.
Okay, that wasn't clear at all. I think you need to, I mean, we never heard that number before this slide that I'm aware of. Maybe I missed it, but I'm not aware of it. That is a much more substantial number than I was envisioning off of my quick calculations of the numbers. So, you know, that's I mean, I'd still like to see us closer to 50% than 5% for the first year, because, you know, you're going to get the big bang at the beginning and then it's going to fall off, huh?
Yeah.
Just FYI. But, you know, anyway, that makes me feel much better about these numbers.
Great. Yeah, so each of the targets I mentioned in the prior section of this presentation were for 6 months, over the course of the next 6 months, those goals. So, you know, acknowledging that participation is really going to what drives our water savings, right? So we need to make sure that customers are aware of the programs that are offered. And that means that, you know, the outreach, the marketing, the program collateral all feed into participation. In addition, staff time, meaning program design, right? So if we design a program that has so many hurdles and hoops to jump through, customers just won't take us up on those offers. And so we need to take that into consideration as well. So looking at design and implementation, the level of pre and post inspections that are required, and then finally program evaluations, being able to go back and evaluate how successful was the program that we offered and were the water savings achieved that we estimated, right? So we can refine our savings projections as we move forward. So these are all very important when we consider the total cost and rollout of a program. So now, just quickly, I want to talk about some of the sample package programs that we ran for each of the various scenarios, looking at what level of investment could be offered or presented to the board for your consideration. So starting with current programs, these are all kind of the programs we had in place prior to the drought. And then we looked at something that's a bit more aggressive, right? Slightly more robust in program A. So with the program A offerings, it would be providing and continuing all the current programs with some upgrades, meaning instead of offering $1 per square foot, we could offer $2 a square foot. And then, offer something like a leak repair service for our low-income customers, et cetera. And then looking at program B, it's an even more robust program. It continues to increase the turf incentive by adding a design assistance program to that. And then also, so all of program A offerings would be included in program B, and all of the current programs would be included. So we're continuing to make the programs kind of, more significant and have more robust offerings, if you would. And finally, landing on program C, which is everything listed here, including a $3 per square foot incentive. So when we looked at each of these package programs, we then in turn could evaluate the water savings potential. It's important to note that the programs within each of those package scenarios, they'll shift depending on, current technology and trends. But the idea is to look at these various investment levels and understand that there are specific water savings that could be associated with that level of investment. The board has seen this slide before with some modifications. So prior in previous presentations, we really focused in on the incentive investment per year. And the feedback from the board was, that was not, that we wanted to see something that was more significant. And when we went back and took another look, I realized that we weren't taking into consideration all of the program costs. The level of marketing and community engagement that was going to be required to achieve these goals. And so when we took another look, we can establish these new levels of investment per year for each of the various programs. And in turn, you can see the 10-year investment and then the cost per acre foot. So what we're looking for is really is input on not the program scenarios, not the package programs that I briefly went over, but really what level of investment the board would like to see brought forward into the 10-year financial plan. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
So Carrie, my first question is on the numbers per acre foot. Is that assuming that none of this is bond financed? In other words, it's not amortized. This is all going to come out of annual operating funds, because that will change dramatically the acre foot cost.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, the money we're going to pay, whether it's from bond financing or from rates, is still the same money. The bond financing would probably have an interest component, so it may bring it up. I don't believe it would bring it down.
Okay, well, that's a longer conversation. I don't know if you've engaged Ed Harrington yet, one way or another, but my understanding, and I'm not the finance person, is that by amortizing those costs over time, it actually does change the calculation of the acre foot cost, because you're not paying for it. There's a cost of money involved that changes over time. But again, I'm not the expert on that, but this is assuming everything is coming out of operating funds. Okay, so can you just tell me where we are with the conversation with Ed and others? I think we talked about 3 or 4 months ago now about engaging him and some others in this discussion about how to pay for these things using capital.
Yeah, our plan on that, we have had some good discussions, and our plan is currently that at the board retreat, when we're looking at the entire day to talk about water supply, we would certainly have a heavy component on conservation element talking about these issues, but getting into financing and other sort of kind of long-term programmatic concepts. So that would be in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah, just to get back to President Kohler's point about the cost, it would reduce the annual cost But by doing so, you're amortizing it. It's going to take longer to pay it off, but annually it would reduce it for sure. So, that's.
But it doesn't change the dollars per acre foot though, because if you're going to spend $10,
Right. It may
still spending $10. Yeah, it will increase it. Yeah.
Increase it because of the interest you pay. But the point
Yeah.
is that just as far as annual impact on the budget would be
Yes.
reduced for sure.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
That is the issue. Right.
Well, that depends. The number we're using as a parameter for evaluation is dollars per acre foot. That's not going to change the dollars per acre foot. It's,
Oh.
if anything, it's going to increase them. The
Correct.
number we have always used is you take the capital amount and you divide by the savings in water, and that's the dollars per acre foot. So, that has always been the way they've looked at these programs.
Right. Well, we have to look at it from a budget point of view too. So I think.
Of course, cash flow is a whole different issue. And you're exactly right. It will reduce the cash flow, but it doesn't change the dollars per acre foot unless to increase them.
Correct.
My sense is that regardless of the cost per acre foot, and this goes to the point you made in a meeting a couple weeks ago, Ben, long-term water use efficiency is where we need to be investing. That's going to be, where we are building our climate resilience. That's going to be how we are avoiding adverse impacts of future droughts. And it's how we're going to be true to our mission to also be, appropriate stewards in light of climate change. So the numbers look high. My guess is that in the future, they will not, as we explore the costs of alternatives.
Right. So
I don't think those numbers are so high, Cynthia.
No, I'm that's right.
I
I'm just
mean,
saying,
I
look at
think they're,
current programs and future programs. I'm just saying that may give some people pause, is all I'm saying.
oh, it may, but I mean, we're looking at, if you looked at the last round, the numbers that came out of Ben and Paul, I think you were talking $1,600 an acre foot is what we're paying right now for Russian River water served at the tap. So, it's not 4 times the numbers we're currently spending or something like that.
Right.
and it's notably less than certainly desal and other sorts of projects. So what we're trying to do is kind of build it, frankly, in line with Harrington's recommendation supporting where we're going, is we look at programs, understanding the funding, the costs, and then discuss the funding mechanisms. So we are looking for board feedback on these program levels, as Carrie noted, A, B, C, which one the board would like to see incorporated into the 10-year financial plan. I'm assuming it's program C, but I'd like the board to give us direction on that.
That certainly would be my vote.
I don't know what the format is that we provide that input to you, Ben. I don't quite
Yeah.
follow the
So-
logic of where we're headed in terms of how a decision gets made.
Right. So this is not a decision-making meeting. This is discussion. So we're really looking for the sense of the board. So when we have our final 10-year plan meeting, the conservation piece is in line with the board's general expectations. That's what we're looking for.
Well, I think the key thing here is that, I think we're looking at alternative costs that maybe double these numbers for water supply. Desal probably even higher than that.
Way higher.
So I think I agree with Cynthia completely that the more the better in this situation, and the sooner the better.
Yeah, and I'd go along with that. I mean, at this point, it's aspirational and, but
Yeah.
1,500 acre feet a year would, that's a pretty good start.
Exactly.
Yeah, I essentially agree, although there's a lot that I feel I don't know here, to tell you the truth. So obviously what we're doing is extremely important in the context of the crisis we're in right now. So I'd say motor on, but I'm holding the final decision until I see the full picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we have that.
Absolutely. Well, with the understanding, of course, that The 10-year financial plan is just that, it's a plan, and likely will adaptively manage going higher or wherever we go in the years ahead.
Right, but it does set some goals and some targets for us long term. So yeah, I would say the most ambitious is the best and really the most realistic.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We appreciate that feedback. And then finally, next steps. So we'll, as far as the drought incentive programs, we'll come back to the board as part of our monthly drought updates, or every board meeting drought updates to track how we're proceeding towards meeting those targets and the progress to date. And then as far as the 10-year financial plan, based on your input, we will integrate that into the workshop, and that will be brought back to the board at a future meeting. So with that, thank you so much.
Thanks a
Any
lot.
other questions?
Thanks for a great presentation.
Of course.
You're on mute.
Sorry, any comments from the public?
Yes, I have one comment from Jenna. Go ahead, Jenna.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm clear.
Thank you. I missed the beginning of this discussion, so I apologize, but I was just curious if gray water is part of any of the incentive programs that you're looking at, because it seems like that is an opportunity to reduce water consumption by reusing it, and curious to understand what where that is in the thought process of incentivizing people to reduce their use through reuse.
Would you like me to take that? Yes.
Sure.
All right. So yes, Jen, absolutely. We do have a gray water incentive program. We actually, it's a laundry to landscape program where folks can get a $100 discount on all the tools all the hardware they need to install a laundry to landscape system. It's offered through the Urban Farmer Store, and the information's on our website if you'd like to take a look there. We agree it's a good opportunity to save.
Yeah, I've seen that before, the laundry to landscape, and that's awesome that you're providing that. And there's perhaps other ways that we can be incorporating it beyond the laundry to landscape with really bringing people, their showers and putting it into just the water that gets used in other parts of the house as well. It can be used in so many different ways, and it just seems like such an opportunity. And my partner and I are looking at creating something called Water Champions that helps with that effort. And as we develop it, I'd love to continue the conversation to see if there's other ways to partner with this group to incentivize people to really look at the reuse part of the equation.
That sounds great. I would invite you to reach out to us. Send us an email at conservation@marinwater.org. It sounds like a good conversation we can have to see what your group's doing and how we can help get the word out.
The next speaker is Baron Hamill. Go ahead, Ms. Hamill.
Thank you. I refer you to the letter in the Marin IJ today, which will be shown in my next A Drop in the Bucket newsletter. Briefly, my position is this. Why are golf courses allowed to irrigate with potable water or raw water when we're in a severe drought? It's my objective to see this exemption stopped, if not immediately, then soon. I'd like to hear your position on this.
Carrie, can you respond? Because I believe most golf courses are irrigated with recycled water, but it would be great to have
No,
clarified.
no, they aren't. They aren't, Cynthia.
Okay, but
They're not. Some of our largest water users are golf courses. She has a very interesting point. The problem is the availability of the water and the location of the golf course aren't synced at this point. So it's a very interesting question. I think it's something beyond what we can address in a short comment here.
And
Fair enough, but
also-
I think it's also come up a fair amount, so I think we need to have some kind of fact sheet on the website and sent out to people, because at least I was under the impression that golf courses, we were cooperating with them and that they were significantly reducing their water use and using non-potable water where feasible. So I think we've got different understandings of the situation. So if nothing else, I think we need to ask staff to provide something written that's clear and, maybe add it to the FAQs. But it seems to me it needs its own definitive response.
Just,
Well, I think everything you said is true. They're reducing their water and they're trying, but not the non-potable source.
Right.
There's just no non-potable sources that I'm aware of. Any of them are using at the moment.
I think the one on Smith Ranch Road, Smith Ranch, I think may be hooked up to.
That would make sense. Yeah, McGinnis Park would
Yeah, I
make
thought there were
sense.
some.
Yes.
But
I definitely feel like we've heard that.
Yeah, that one is. The history of it is that our original drought ordinance prohibited them from using water except to water greens. They came to us through the variance process and said, we can save significant amount of water. Let us do it our own way without restricting it to greens. So I think the question on the table should be, do we have any data on the water use of the golf courses that you could share today?
So you're absolutely correct, Director Bagman. They did pursue the variant. So Meadow Club, Mill Valley, who has their municipal golf course, and Peacock Gap all pursued a variance with an alternative means of compliance. They've committed to reducing their demands by at least 40%. Just this week, I received the Mill Valley's report. They're all on slightly different monthly schedules for reporting. They had reduced 47%. They do report to us monthly on how they're doing in complying with this variance and the alternative means of compliance. And I don't recall off the top of my head the percentages for the other two locations, but I certainly have them, and we do collect that information.
And just for the basic point of using recycled water, absolutely, but it's pretty reassuring to hear that they have achieved a 47% reduction.
Right.
Just a follow-up question, 2 points. I'd like to know, as a member of the public, how much water is each of these golf courses using, potable water? And why can't they truck in recycled water? We've got companies that have been getting a lot of press recently about how they're using recycled water for their businesses. Paul Burros in particular has gotten a lot of ink talking about he does power washing of decks and houses before painting and so on. And he's been renting a truck, going to the recycled water distribution point and bringing it to his work sites. Why can't the golf courses do the same? Thank you.
Frankly, it's because the golf courses are too big. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of gallons a day.
And that's
golf
my
course.
point, that the public is being asked not to flush their toilets so that a few people
I
have water
understand
so
your
that
point.
they have on the greens.
I understand your point, but
Thank
the problem is it's the logistics of it is where the difficulty is. It's not a matter of going and getting a tanker of water and then doing your work for the day. It's way beyond those numbers. You're talking about basically a continuous stream of tankers going through Fairfax, for instance, every day to supply that kind of water at a cost that's 10 or 100 times the cost of what they currently are using. So they're working on it, and your point is well taken. We hear you. Like I say, this is a very complex issue because of their location. And I will say this, the Meadow Club is looking at alternatives also for their water supply, non-potable alternatives.
And we have a shovel-ready project for Peacock Gap.
Peacock Gap. Yep.
Keep pushing that.
And that would be Las Colinas to Peacock Gap?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just an extension of the existing system.
Right, okay.
But we have to go through China Camp, and there's a Native American burial ground, and there's a lot of little subtle things that affect it.
Unless we put it through the bay,
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I have one last speaker, James Krajewski. Go ahead, Mr. Krajewski.
You can hear me
Yes.
now?
Yes,
Loud
sir.
and clear.
I wanted to comment I'm a little surprised by this last discussion about the golf course and the seeming lack of knowledge about the actual consumption that these golf courses use. I had a letter in the IJ a couple of days ago, and my concern about this is that the public is not getting good data from the water district about where all this water use is going. What we really need is one place in the water district website that says, this is our main use of water in Marin. It's houses, it's businesses, it's golf courses, it's how many people are in tier 3, what percentage are in tier 4. All of these kinds of data need to be in one place where we can see it, because otherwise, you know, when I flush my toilet and I save a half a gallon of water because I have a lower water use, then what does that mean if somebody's using hundreds of thousands of gallons of water on a golf course? And so the public needs to have this data, and you all, everybody needs to have access to this data, and it needs to be readily available on the website so we can find it. The way it is now, it's not available. You can't find the information, and there's no coherent thing to it. So that all of these discussions about solutions can be tied into, this is how much water we think it will save with this solution. But first of all, we have to know where all the water is going. I used to go to a health club and the water was constantly running out of the faucets there. I mean, sometimes it was dripping, sometimes it was a little stream, and you'd complain about it, it wouldn't get fixed. I don't know whether they had an individual water meter or it was part of a whole shopping center or what it was, but all of these kinds of things need to be brought forth with data.
In the future, if you see a situation like that, Mr. Kajewski, please contact the water district and we will send somebody out to take a look at those leaking issues and talk to the folks about that. I question the use of the ice cream scooper water flows at the theater, and they sent someone out and they were in compliance with what the health department requires. But more importantly, we're working on, I saw your comment in the paper and I forwarded it to Ben, the general manager, and I think your idea is a good one, trying to pull this together. We do know those numbers. The single largest water user in Marin is San Quentin. And but keep in mind, it's a lot like income taxes. That it sounds really good to talk about taxing Jeff Bezos and all that kind of thing, but the real action is in the middle class in the middle. And you know, we have so many connections, so many more connections in the 50,000 kind of number range of the 60,000 connections that are in the middle. And each of us, if we can just use the least water we can use, it adds up. And, you know, I think it's not a good approach to try and concentrate on the big users only and say, well, we got to get the big users. That's good, but we got to get the average guys too. And everybody just needs to use the least they can use. It'll all add up.
Could I
agree with that.
make a quick suggestion? I know, you know, staff is already overburdened. We don't really have the staff to go enforce for every violation, which all of us see every day. Whether we could print a form that folks could just print out and leave at houses if they really are irritated by seeing water waste. So it could be, dear neighbor, you know, I noticed this, you know, could you please call MMWD about their conservation program? So it would just be a little less invasive of an approach. But it would just be sort of a friendly reminder that all of us could have handy to give out in our neighborhoods. So
interesting idea.
And I have a hard stop in 1 minute. So just last comment to address the speaker's thoughts about finding things on the website. Jeannie, you may want to reach out because I know some, maybe not all of the data he's looking for is actually fairly available on the website. So it may be something we want to think about making a little easier to find, maybe incorporate it into the FAQs. But I do believe that pretty much everything on that list. Maybe not every single thing, but most of the things that the speaker mentioned, I think is available on the website, but perhaps you can speak to that.
Yep, absolutely. I actually did see that and look through it and, talk about ways that maybe we can aggregate it into one place. We don't have all of the data like acreage and things like that, but we do have much of it. So yes, we'll definitely work on it. And thank you for the feedback. That's really helpful because we want to be as helpful to the community and to our customers as possible. We appreciate
I
it.
would suggest, Jeannie, that we start with modifying the general manager's report for the board meetings. A fair portion of that information is already there. The tier 4s, the tier 3s, the tier 2s, the tier 1s. We could just expand that table and make it more prominent and then display the table on the webpage somehow or another. So it makes it easy to find.
Got it. Thank you.
Right. And with that, I need to sign off. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Cynthia.
I have no further speakers.
Okay, well, with that, and it looks like you were right, Ben, these things are running a lot longer than I expected. I'm going to make a suggestion, Ben, that we go back to an old program that we had, which is ask Terry to make an estimate of the length of each of the discussion sessions on the agenda. So I know it's very difficult to do, Terry. I got it. I know we just have to rub your tummy and move forward. And at least gives us a feel for what the staff is envisioning then going forward. With that said, let's go to number 2. Water Conservation Investment Plan. Crystal?
Sorry, we
Hello?
just completed that item. It's emergency
Oh,
drought.
that's when we completed. Sorry. Okay, you jumped ahead of me there. Okay, number 3, emergency drought project updates. Crystal?
Yes. Good morning. I'll actually be taking this one, Director Russell.
Well, everybody's being tricky on me here. You're moving the chess pieces around.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Yeah, Paul Sellier, Operations Director. Let me just get this going. There we go. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so good morning. So this is an update on our emergency drought projects. I just wanted to pause for a moment before moving into it, just to understand what we mean when we say emergency drought project. These are projects that can provide the sort of needed volume that we anticipate needing within the timeframes that we need them. And as you'll see in a moment here, the time frame is fairly compressed, and that excludes a wide range of what we would normally consider water supply projects. And I know there have been a few comments from the public about why we haven't considered certain things. So our focus today really in this presentation is to provide an update on our emergency drought projects. And we'll be taking a look at our current water supply situation and the projection going forward into next year before touching on desalination, water transfers. And we've packed a lot in here, so we'll pause before our next steps with a summary. And you'll note our graphic on the right here, severe drought. And it's just to note that we want to continue to focus, even though we're talking about water supply projects, on conservation. Will play a key element. So as we look at our water supply planning, and the board have seen this projection, this is our reservoir storage from January of 2020, projecting out into September, November of 2022. And it's based on the projection is the dashed line. The black line is our actual reservoir storage. And what this graph tells us is that if we receive the same rainfall and runoff as we did last year and achieve a 20% conservation level, which we have done, and maintain that level, that it looks like we're going to be needing additional water supply sometime in the second half of next year. And so looking maybe a little closer at these planning assumptions in terms of rainfall and runoff, it's important to note that 2020 is not, the 2020 rainfall runoff is not a worst case scenario. The 2020 was a La Nina year, and La Nina is again indicated for this year coming. And you might ask, well, what would the effect of greater conservation? We've just heard a fantastic presentation on conservation. If we were able to achieve a greater level, a greater degree of conservation. And that's represented here by the green dashed line. And you can see that that really changes the point at which we cross this sort of uncertainty volume in our reservoirs from July 1st of 2020 to September 1st of 2022. So a difference of only a couple of months. And I think it's important to note that the 40% conservation level, while maybe an optimistic target for summertime, considering we can reduce irrigation fairly easily, is maybe wildly optimistic to think that we could achieve that for indoor water use. From this chart, then, our time frame for any water supply project is clear. We will need, on these assumptions, a water supply in the second half of 2022. So looking at our first project consideration, we looked at desalination, and there were three alternatives. And taking them in reverse order, alternative 3 was a full-scale facility. And if you recall at the top of the presentation, I mentioned we're talking in the time frame deliveries of a project within a year. And that takes a full-scale facility out of the discussion. So we won't be talking about the full-scale facility today. That leaves us with alternative 2 and 1, which are ship-based or barge-based desalination systems and land-based sort of containerized pre-engineered units. Our ship or barge-based systems, when our team of Kennedy, Jenks, and Jacobs explored the availability of ship or barge-based systems, what we found was they're just simply not readily available. And in fact, there are no US suppliers. Water Standard, shown here in the graphic on the upper right, is no longer in the business of supplying barge or ship-mounted units. And then there are a number of other challenges you might imagine of constructing facilities for a barge or a ship in San Francisco Bay, along with the uncertainty in permitting. And there are a number of other challenges that I haven't listed here. So the team did not explore these units any further. It just didn't seem to be a viable option. In terms of the land-based desal units, we did find some success, and the best option that we came up with was 2 Osmoflow plants or packaged plants that we could get access to that would provide 3,600 acre-feet per year, or about 3.6 MGD, million gallons per day. And again, as I mentioned, these are containerized, pre-engineered, which means they're easy, relatively easy to ship and then reassemble, and of course refurbish so that they can be used. The schedule for that land-based desalination supply overall looks to be about 6 to 12 months. This is a very aggressive schedule. PG&E, for example, can require up to 12 months for a power drop, and we'd need about 3 megawatts for this plant. To get around that, of course, we can use diesel generators. Design build of support facilities, while we can get the desalination and pre-treatment units installed and delivered within 6 to 9 months, the design and building of the support facilities, which include about a mile of brine pipeline and pump station, booster station to get the drinking water into the distribution system, chemical treatment facilities, controls, electrical, and associated yard piping would take another 6 months to 12 months as well. So overall, about 6 to 12 months for the desalination plant. And this is a temporary plant, as I said, capable of producing 3,600 acre-feet per year, or 3.6 million gallons per day, for a total conceptual project cost approaching $30 million. So that's our desalination status to date. Water transfers. As we move into water transfers, it's important that we understand what we're talking about. So transfer of water, it's legal sale of water between two parties, which typically would require the seller to take certain actions to make the water available for the buyer. For example, fallowing of farmland so that water that would ordinarily be used to irrigate that farmland could then be made available and sold. And hundreds of water transfers occur every year in California. So a fairly common element of water supply planning. Our approach in water transfers has then been to go out into the market and identify partners and where that water might be that we could get a hold of. And the targeted volumes, as I mentioned again at the top, was our indoor water use, which is on the order of 10 to 15,000 acre feet per year. And in the context of millions of gallons per day, that's between about 9 million gallons to 13.5 million gallons per day. And we're looking at these options that would typically be conveyed through East Bay agency facilities with a delivery via the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge pipeline that we're considering. Our planning projections, as we saw at the top, also indicates that the water transfer would need to be deliverable in the second half of 2022. Looking at the timeline, a transfer process has a number of different steps. And we're currently in the first step where we're identifying potential partners. The next steps would be to develop terms and agreements with those partners before moving into approvals for the water transfer from the various state and federal agencies before we would arrive at a viable water transfer. Our project schedule, I think for a moment, just to look at this graphic, our schedule shows us going from June of 2021 to the end of June or July of 2022. One thing I think that just stands out here with this very aggressive schedule is that there are a number of parallel steps, which again is an indicator of a very compressed schedule. So as challenging a schedule as it is, it's well thought out. As we look to the left of the schematic, it's broken up into 3 areas describing the water transfer steps, the pipeline planning, and pipeline design and construction. Presently, you'll note that the team is assessing the options in terms of the water transfer, while at the same time going through and verifying feasibility of the pipeline on the bridge. That involves looking at what the best place on the bridge might be to put the pipeline and how it might be placed there. We've also attempted to indicate in this schematic a number of places where the board will need to take action. Most notably in authorizing the design phase, where we anticipate that if all goes according to plan, sometime mid-September of this year. So what are our options? So what we've been doing, as I mentioned last time, we're looking in these 3 areas, Sacramento, Los Vaqueros, and the McElhenny systems, and really focusing on 1 and 2, where there appear to be some viable partners. And we've bolded our key partners here, notably sister agencies Contra Costa Water District and East Bay Mud. And then we've identified in bold 4 agencies that appear to be viable water transfer sources for us. Those water transfers, of course, will require permits and approvals, and the different agencies will depend on the source of that transfer and include the State Water Resources Control Board, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and of course, we'll need a CEQA or NEPA as well. East Bay Mud is a key partner for any water transfer for us. And so any agreement with East Bay Mud essentially will include wheeling, which is a term that we use to describe the conveyance of water through the East Bay Mud system. And that may include storage and indeed treatment of the water as well. East Bay Mud staff have been very generous with their time and have expressed a willingness to continue helping us explore water transfers. Looking geographically, I just thought it might help for everyone to get an idea of where the water and where the key partners are in this. And you can see Marin Water, East Bay Mud, and Contra Costa down in the sort of south of the picture here, and the water sources up to the north, all centered around the Sacramento area. And the water will all take a very similar path to get to us. And that's shown schematically here. Following, somehow the water all the sources will arrive into the Sacramento River at some point. And the water, it will then be extracted through the East Bay Mud Freeport intake system, which will convey the water approximately 20 miles through 3 pump stations into the McCallamy Aqueduct. And from the McCallamy Aqueduct, it'll be conveyed to the Lafayette Aqueduct by gravity and into San Pablo Reservoir. From San Pablo, it will gravity to the El Sobrante treatment plant. And at that point, it will move through the East Bay Mud system towards the Richmond Bridge, where should the board decide to pursue this project, our new facilities will pick it up and pump it across the bridge into the Marin Municipal distribution system. And you might think that this whole system, this whole plan is dependent on Freeport, in which case, if there was an issue with Freeport, well, what would you do? Well, actually, it's not entirely dependent on Freeport. You'll note that the water could continue to travel down the Sacramento to the Delta, and Contra Costa Water District have their own intake system, and they can transfer the water from there into Los Vaqueros, and there are facilities to move the water from Los Vaqueros into the McCallamy Aqueduct system, and from there on into the new facilities. So the path for the water is established and fairly clear, and the partners are have indicated their willingness to help us. One of those partners with the source of water is the Glen Calusa Irrigation District. And they have a long history of water transfers. In the past year, they've, I think this year actually, transferred over 45,000 acre feet. It's useful to have a partner that has a good history of water transfers. They can be tricky, and they'll know the pitfalls and maybe even shortcuts as well to help us. Discussions with them have revealed that it looks like they have the potential to fulfill our need for next year in terms of the 10 to 15,000 acre feet that we're looking for. And importantly, this water is, as I said earlier, it's made available by fallowing of land. So it's not, that we're withdrawing extra water. This is water that would ordinarily be used for irrigating agricultural land, and instead would be used in Marin. And the approvals for this particular example are the State Water Resources Control Board, the United States Bureau of Reclamation. So just pausing for a quick summary. Looking at desalination, we did find 3.6 thousand acre feet or 3.6 MGD for a total project cost, including the operational cost of around 30 to $40 million. The project can be delivered within 12 months. It is somewhat capacity limited. As I noted, we're looking for somewhere in the region of 10 to 15,000 acre feet. However, the regulatory process for desalination is not very well defined, and there's no history of desalination facilities being constructed in San Francisco Bay. Water transfers, on the other hand, do appear to have the volume that we're looking for in terms of the 15,000 acre feet, and the total project costs approaching $90 million, a range of 60 to 90. The delivery schedule for the project is very aggressive at 12 months. And as I note here, the capacity is adequate and the regulatory process is well defined. And of course, water supply options appear to be available. and the paradigm is well established in California. One thing that I think as we move into next steps that's important here is the role of conservation. And I want to pick this up first because we've highlighted how challenging the project schedule would be for water transfers or for desalination. And the role that conservation can help us with in this context is really extending the water supply, providing us valuable time to help deliver extremely challenging water supply projects. Our next steps then will be pursuing the water transfer options with the sort of 4 top candidates: Glenn-Colusa, San Juan, and of course Contra Costa and Placer County. We're going to continue the planning of infrastructure to convey the water, which is sort of 3 elements, if you like, which is pipe on the bridge, the west side piping and pumping improvements, and our east side piping and pumping improvements. And just to hit it again, conservation is needed to continue and to get better penetration, greater conservation, to provide adequate time to develop and deliver the project. Along the way, we'll be bringing regular updates to the board. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions.
Okay, that's a great presentation, Paul. I think it's important to indicate to folks that the water is not coming from East Bay Mud. All they're doing is wheeling the water through their system, and that it has a net zero impact on East Bay Mud. There's some financial impact, but no water impact. I know people have expressed concerns, well, where are they going to get the water? And you've answered all those questions. How do you envision making a choice between the 4 alternatives, or do we just make a deal with all 4 of them?
Yeah, so we'll get back to you on that. Obviously, as we explore the options, they become more becomes known about the certainty. And again, back to the comments about Glenn-Colusa and the history of successfully performing water transfers, and sort of becomes important. So right now, it does appear that that's a leading option for us, because also they seem to have the quantity. It may be possible to have a couple of options in place, but we're not ready to make that recommendation yet.
Do you envision a bidding process or a gentleman's negotiation?
Yeah, I think the cost of the water could be a factor. I think certainly we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. The idea is to get to a contractual commitment point, and we'll continue to brief the board on the costs, the risks in the different opportunities, and try and make with the board, of course, the best decision possible. But at this point, it's all the above with the 4, and we're going to continue to work with all of them. And they do understand we're talking to other folks. There is generally a market price for water. So, and we're seeing for the most part, that range fairly consistently.
And what is the range?
It's about $650 was the last price that I heard. And the option price, which is different than the purchase price, was about $10 an acre foot.
And then, but Paul, I mean, East Bay Mud's going to charge more than that to treat the water. It's going to be at least double that number to come through their system for full treatment.
Yes. I don't know about double, but we will work with them to understand that.
Aren't we like 500 an acre foot for treatment right now?
That's not far off. Yeah, I think it'd be 350, 400.
Oh, 350. Oh, it's that low. Okay. It's lower than I thought. Okay. Sorry, Larry.
As far as the water transfer process, how would you compare what we're looking at with what we do with the Russian River? Is it more or less comparable, or is it quite a bit different?
In terms of cost, I think
no, just process from here to there.
Oh, I think the process is reasonably well established. Freeport is an existing, intake structure that East Bay Mud already know how to operate and have operated, and I understand will be operating either later this year or next year.
Right.
So those conveyance facilities exist, and yeah.
And so the CEQA and the federal NEPA process would be obviously something we don't need to do with Sonoma. That's well established, developing agreements. So there's certainly additional steps, but they are fairly well defined and will just take time and effort.
Well, actually, I was asking, we've been doing the Russian River water now for a number of years, but on day one, was the system, were we about in the same place as we are now here for the East Bay transfers? Yeah. Okay. The other question I have is, how reliable is it? One of the objections that you hear from people all the time is, well, they don't have any, East Bay doesn't have any water either. So what good is that going to do? Obviously, that's proving not to be the case. You know, we're getting a very favorable response. When we talk about desal, we say, well, the advantage is it's water forever. Can we say that about this process as well? Or is it, yes, there's water today, but will there be next year and the year after that?
I think that's a good question. I think what we're seeing is that this is an extremely dry year and time period that we're in, and yet there's still water available for purchase. To give you an idea, I think Glenn-Colusa, as I mentioned, transferred this year 45,000 acre feet of water. And I think I recall they had ability up to 60,000 acre feet.
And Paul, if you reflect back on 76, 77, you would say exactly the same thing. And DEET was able to get MWD to release the water out of their Southern California reserves to feed to us. So again, a very, very dry period, but there was still water available. But I think the important thing here is to move quickly, because we can't be the only ones sniffing around.
Right.
As far as the option, $10 an acre foot, that means that we would have to put up cash to reserve our rights, correct?
Correct.
So 10,000 acre feet would be $100,000 option payment.
Correct.
And that would hold the water for what, a year?
It would hold the water until a call date, which we would need to negotiate.
Okay.
It could be anywhere from March next year to, maybe May. It's a negotiation at that point.
And we may want to do more than one option. And that's the sort of details we'll be bringing back to the board, because post-option is the agreements and NEPA and CEQA and all of that. So we'll be talking more about that.
And Glenn-Colusa, I'm sure, is subject to, there are some ongoing challenges right now to the whole, system as far as allocation is concerned. I mean, what I've read anyway, not to say that there's no water available, but that the system is over allocated. So, I mean, the fact that Glenn-Colusa have surplus essentially, that may change, could change, correct?
Director Bragman, I would say it's not that they have a surplus. They have senior water rights, and it's really an economic decision for the farmer. Do they want to use those water rights to irrigate their land, or would they sell those water rights, fallow their field, and go on vacation or whatever they may decide? I'm not trying to be trite, whatever they would decide to do otherwise than the typical agricultural irrigation.
Right, but I'm just saying the source of the water is the Bay Delta Sacramento River system, correct? That's what we're talking about.
Ultimately, yes, I think.
Yeah, and then one other question, because I know that's a whole nother discussion. So, which is, I would assume this would be intermittent use, right? We wouldn't be necessarily using this on an every year basis, or what's contemplated as far as the use of this conveyance?
So we are looking at this with a focused effort of this drought, and using the 10 to 15,000 acre feet under the assumptions that we shared in the graph that we would need it to continue to do what we've done for well over 100 years of supplying our residents safe and reliable water. Certainly, once we build the infrastructure, there'd be opportunities at other times during water shortages or other to look into that market to potentially take water. But our focus here absolutely and really exclusively at this point is on the drought for the duration, whatever duration the drought may be.
And could I just throw out another question, and it may be a trite question, but is there any discussion with Sonoma as far as increasing supply and paying a premium to do so?
We do. I'm sorry, Paul, if I may.
Hey, please.
Because he knows more of this than I do, so feel free to jump in. What we've been in discussion with Grant Davis, the general manager of Sonoma Water, and we set up a meeting with Sonoma Water and all the retailers to explore, are there any opportunities? Certainly the infrastructure is already there, and that would be our absolute preference. So I believe, Paul, that meeting is next week.
Correct.
And we'll be exploring each and every, if any, opportunity for the North to look at potential for additional water.
Okay, and I would just put out there, given the numbers we're talking about, which are substantial, you know, from my point of view, paying a premium to get drought supply is a good investment for both sides of the agreement. So
Absolutely.
I hope that's
Absolutely.
I hope that's under consideration as far as.
I think we share that.
Okay.
And you know, from the board standpoint, Larry, it's going to be time to put on our big boy pants. I mean, this is getting to be serious stuff here, and we're going to have to make some decisions, just as they did in the 76, 77. You know, this is not one of these things where we can continue to scratch our bellies. We're going to have to make some decisions. And basically, you know, I hope, frankly, that it rains like it's never rained before in the fall, and that this money goes down the drain, literally, that we never have to use it. But, you know, that's not wise business approach here. We need the backup of having an alternative. I mean, I thought your graph was very well put together, Paul, of showing what's going to happen. La Nina, I think, is a serious consideration here. You know, it looks to me like we're looking for instant replay of this year. And, you know, that's just how it is. And like I say, at 100K, if we have to do contracts with all four of them to option to make sure that we have the water, I think we need to do it. And like I say, what I'm worried about is that we're a little slow at the draw here. You know, not that we're being slow at the draw, but, you know, that this thing could get away from us because we can't be the only one looking for water.
No, indeed, and even this year, we were just on a call with Contra Costa yesterday with our consulting team, and there may be some availability to actually purchase water this November, which would then be stored maybe in Los Vaqueros in anticipation, right? Should the board decide to move forward, and you know, we don't know the details yet, but it could be where Contra Costa might agree to, if we don't use the water, they might purchase it back from us.
Sure.
So there's some mitigation, you know, risk mitigation.
And I think just to remind the board on that schedule, Director Russell rightly noted the fall. In terms of rainfall, we likely will not have the benefit to wait until our typical heavy rainfall months to see what this year looks like, to be able to keep this project on the schedule as we've identified.
Right, because we have a very short time frame. I understand that. Just to go back to the desal for a second, as far as that temporary facility or the lease facility is concerned, again, would that be an intermittent type operation? So in other words, would we lease it, use it until we feel we're out of drought? Does it stay where we put it? I mean, could you just give kind of a brief explanation of how that would work?
Yes, certainly. So the concept for that plant would be to locate it at the district's Pelican Way yard, which is down there in San Rafael, near the bay, near the Home Depot area, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, it would be temporary until such time as the drought was over or we felt we didn't need that water supply. We could purchase the units. It would add maybe $2 to $4 million to the total price, but then we'd have to find somewhere to keep them. I think it'd be better to contemplate leasing them. At the end of the lease, those facilities, the leased facilities would go away. Some of the facilities could remain. For example, I mentioned putting in the brine disposal line. It wouldn't make sense to take that out, so it would just be sort of capped and left in the ground, potentially for future drought use if that was something that we needed in the future.
And the brine line is the hypersaline waste from the plant that would go back into the bay, correct?
You could say that it's the doubly salty, right? Water. Basically, it's twice as salty as it was, and then it gets mixed with the wastewater effluent, which dilutes it back to hopefully closer to bay standards.
Okay, thanks.
That's the concept on the brine.
Okay, in a nutshell. Okay.
And I would think, Paul, that as far as space, CSMA could probably come up with some space for us to park that kind of stuff if we needed to store it. You know, I know that we're not thinking about that at the moment, but you know, I mean, if we moved it onto CSMA's property, then that brine line would be very short.
Right.
I have an appointment that I have to meet here, so I have to check out. Sorry about that, to say the truth. This is a very excellent presentation. Thank you very much. But have a good weekend, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you. You too, Jack.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, Larry, what do you want to do here? We have two more board items on this doc meeting. I think one of them is short, which is the transferring the Castagna pump station back. I think we could do that one quickly, or we can go through both of them. Although I have a ton of questions, Ben, on the Smith Saddle tanks, which I think probably that one needs full airing to the board.
Yeah.
Or we could do the questions and you could hear the questions. It affects you, you know, Larry, it's your.
No, I think Smith Saddle, maybe if we could defer, and then we definitely need to take up Castagna. So why don't we just move on to that? That's it for this part of the presentation?
We need to ask for public comment on the one we just did.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have one public comment, Baron Hamill. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you again for your attention. Regarding the pipeline on the bridge, is the plan to put it alongside a traffic lane or hang it under the roadway for a more permanent placement? If it's the latter, is the structural engineering study timeline in alignment with the projected need date? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Would you like me to address that, Director Russell?
Sure, absolutely.
Just very briefly, Caltrans are studying all options for placement on the bridge, and we'll have those results completed by end of August.
The next speaker
we're on track for time. That's the bottom line. Yes.
The next speaker we have is Roberto. Go ahead, Roberto.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Good. To the desal system. This is a really difficult problem, and I appreciate your all working on it. I'm fairly familiar with desal, having run one of these plants. My question is on the hardware costs. Are we strictly renting or leasing the hardware? Does that include membrane replacement and other ongoing costs like energy? And finally, who's going to run the plant?
So taking those in order, yes, the costs do include membrane replacements. As for running the plants, we have not made that decision yet. Most likely it would be contract operations, but it may be possible. We do have some operators here with experience operating membrane facilities. We did operate a small membrane desal plant from 2005 to 2007 as a pilot here. So we have some experience, but most likely it would be contract operations.
There are no further questions or comments.
I have a quick question, Paul. Have you talked to our folks in the East Bay about the Antioch desal facility? And is there any update on that operation?
I don't have an update on the regional Bay Area regional desal. Ben, I don't know if you've had any conversations with other GMs on it.
Yeah, I've had a bit. It's been discussed for quite some time, and largely because of the drought, it has picked up energy. The board to proceed with the pipe on the bridge, it would open up certainly the opportunity to tap into that project, which we would benefit from both the location of the intake in terms of it being much less salty than the bay, as well as greater economies of scale, given the size that there'd be a number of other partners as part of that project.
Cool, thank you. Okay, let's move on to Castagna then. And if that's okay, we'll push back. You were right, we need to push back Smith Saddle tanks, Ben. That's okay. You're muted.
Yes, absolutely. We'll bring that back at a future meeting.
Okay, then let's go ahead with the Castagna.
Thank you, Director Russell. I'll be presenting this item.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, I have a short presentation here today. So as the board knows, we are pursuing a rehabilitation of the Castagna pump station to improve the operational efficiency of our imported water supply. This photo here on the right is a picture of the Castagna pump station up in Petaluma. And an important component of the project is an agreement to transfer ownership of the Castagna pump station from Sonoma Water to the Water District. So we have prepared a draft 2021 Castagna pump station transfer agreement. It's a very straightforward agreement. It really encompasses the no-cost transfer of the pump station from Sonoma Water to Marin Water. In turn, we would be conveying an easement to the North Marin Water District for access and maintenance of the North Marin Aqueduct, a portion of which is located on the property. We would also be conveying easements to both North Marin and Sonoma Water for access and maintenance to the telemetry equipment they have on the property.
I think, Mike, we should also indicate that it's originally built by MMWD and was transferred to Sonoma at no cost in some point in time.
Exactly. Yeah, we're kind of reversing that action. So as I mentioned, the draft is under review right now by North Marin and Sonoma Water. So this is an aerial photo of the property with our survey boundaries located on the photograph. So just to orient the committee members, this is Highway 101. This is the southbound lane. This is the northbound lane. And then here, of course, is Castagna Road. And then here's the Castagna pump station. The parcel that will be receiving from Sonoma Water is outlined here on the drawing. And it's about 26,500 square feet. Also on the drawing on the right side, you can see where North Marin Water District's pipeline traverses just the corner there. And so we'll be conveying an easement, a 20-foot wide easement to North Marin so that they can access and maintain their aqueduct. So in summary, district staff is recommending that the operations committee review and refer this item to the board with the recommendation to authorize the general manager to negotiate and execute an agreement to provide for transfer of the Castagna pump station from Sonoma Water to Marin Water. I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have. And of course, Molly's here as well.
And no, I think we should move it on to the board for approval. And, I think this is an important component. I think everybody on the board agrees with that, especially given the, ongoing discussions with Sonoma and everything else that's led up to the decision to rehabilitate the facility. So you guys have done yeoman work, really getting this thing going. So I really appreciate it. Really, it's really been a good effort. So I would move that it go to the board, and thank you again for getting it done.
Now I'll second that. And any public comment?
Not on this item.
Okay, with that, we'll call it a day.
Okay.
And thank you all.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Take care.
Okay. You